afternoon, everybody. This is Ashley from the Gain Center. Just wanted to thank you for joining us today for the AOT Peer and Family Integration Affinity Group for Workforce Development. Today we will have the topic of wellness in the workforce and workplace, and we'll be hearing from Peggy Swarbrick. Peggy, thank you for being with us today.
Great, thank you, Ashley, and welcome everybody this afternoon to this, this webinar dialogue that we're going to have today and talking about wellness in the workplace. And so what I want to do is just give a little overview about how I'm going to, what I'm going to go over, how I'll approach it, and then how we could really make the best use of the time together to really think about some of the ideas that I'm going to talk about, and then have some type of a dialogue around how this can really fit within your work and your day-to-day work. So I'm really going to just highlight, what do we mean by wellness, and what are we talking about when we talk about particularly a concept I like to be using today or these days is wellness self-care, the idea of taking care of our own wellness to be able to help other people's wellness. So I'm going to really dive into that and go over a little bit about what that means, and then just kind of focus in on two strategies that I found myself and many people doing the kind of work that you're doing have found really useful to think about, try to be more mindful about our wellness, is the idea of mindfulness as well as yoga. I'm just going to mention about how these are strategies people are using and potentially ideas about maybe things you are doing or you might want to think about doing, and then just have some dialogue to really understand what are some of the practices that you all are doing already to support your wellness. So as it says here, I work at, I'm the Director of Practice Innovation and Wellness at Rutgers Health University Behavioral Health Care, but I also work at the Wellness Institute of Collaborative Support Programs in New Jersey. So I work two part-time jobs. Basically, at Collaborative Support Programs in New Jersey, we are a large peer-run organization. I've been there about 20 years. So a lot of the work that I'm going to talk about is based on my work being the director at this Collaborative Support Programs in New Jersey. So thanks for letting me talk to you today. So really, a big piece of why we think about wellness, I'm going to define that in a minute, and then, the workplace, how do we fit into our workplace? Again, sometimes their boundaries are often challenging to, because you work, but you also go home and you have this life, and having that work, that balance of that personal and professional work that you do can be challenging. But again, that's why we're on this conversation. I congratulate you for being on the call, to be just even interested in this topic for your own self. We want to be thinking about the idea of self-care and personal well-being. So what I'm going to do is highlight this idea of wellness, self-care, and really defining wellness. And keeping that work-life balance, I think for anyone, is a challenge. But it's the more and more we're aware of, we're making choices, we're becoming aware of, we're supporting one another, I think we're on the right track. So I think that the more we can have these conversations, we can be thinking about these ideas, and we can start to be looking at our day-to-day work, really going to help us with that balance and help us really feel our best at our work, at our home, and all the other things in our life. One of the things that this discussion or this dialogue starts to help us think about is we have a wonderful, well-established support system in our workplace. And again, myself being 7 days a week, that's a big part of my support system. But we definitely need to figure out another support system outside of that. So how do we start to think about that? Because sometimes when those support systems are only in the workplace, it can kind of work towards some of that imbalance. So that's some of the conversation we might talk about or may come up in this dialogue or in this thinking about how do we have that balance. And again, this approach that we're going to be talking about on a wellness approach, how do we look at ourselves from the lens of wellness, can really have that positive effect on the work that we do for ourselves. So this idea of wellness in the workplace, it starts with us. And then as we can start to support other people, it goes there to thinking about how we're focusing on their wellness if we're focusing our own wellness. And I always think of the analogy of, again, I'm hating to fly these days. I'm getting more and more fearful of flying, but one of the first things that's said when we get on that airplane and it starts to take off, they talk to you about putting the oxygen mask on yourself before we can help anybody else put the mask on their self or help anybody else evacuate it. So it kind of gives us that pause to make sure we're taking care of ourselves or we're paying attention to our own needs. So when you do the good work that you do, because all of you in peer and family supporter roles are really doing some amazing, important work for people, it really becomes essential to take care of ourselves and think about our own self-care. So why is self-care or wellness self-care so important? It's because you're doing this good work. So for you to be there and be your best and being able to do the really important things you're doing to help people with the quality of their life, it's going to be important that you're ready and you're there and you're rested enough and focused enough and attentive to enough to their needs. So paying attention to your own needs is self-care. It's not being selfish. It's self-care. You're important. And whenever I think about self-care, we want to build on our strengths. And when I go over a little bit in the next couple of slides, I'll highlight what are some of the strengths we look at. So our own personal wellness, we all have strengths. We may have things that we want to accomplish or we're not satisfied with or we're feeling a little stressed about because we're not accomplishing goals. But we really sit down and do a really good inventory, and I'll be sharing some resources to follow up with this to help you to potentially do these inventories for yourself. You have strengths. You have a lot of good things going well for you. So having that time to pause and remind yourself of those things is important. And again, the analogy I brought back down is paying attention to our needs. What are our needs? And sometimes when we get so caught up in our work, it's hard to step back and remember what we need. But again, taking care of that is going to help us to do the work much more effective and more, meeting people where they are at and being attentive to their needs. And again, this is why it's important. It's, again, into a habit, getting into the habit of our own wellness, self-care, taking care of our own wellness is really going to be important. So I'm going to highlight when I talk about the mindfulness and, taking those pauses can get us into that habit of getting back into aware of our own needs. What do we need to be our best? And again, it says, just falling in love with it, getting more passionate about it, just as passionate as you are probably about the good work you do, being more passionate about caring for ourselves. And it's, again, about that mind, body, spirit connection. Really important to take the emotional weather, the weather of where we are today and where are we feeling well, where maybe you need to step back a little bit, maybe you need to make sure we take that lunch break or that even that bathroom break. Sometimes it comes down to that, to take care of our own needs, to be able to be sure we are most effective in the work that we're doing. I'd like to have a little definition of self-care because sometimes it can get a little bit, what do we mean by that? And it probably is self-defined in many ways, but it's really planned and deliberate things that we do on a daily or weekly basis to manage our needs or meet our needs and to manage the stress that we have. And stress is there. It's very positive stress, but it is just can sometimes take over us. So that's really where when we get into a regular habit of our self-care and paying attention and doing our self-care, it's going to help us to manage all that stress and strain that happens in our life. So it helps us stay physically healthy. Okay, we brush our teeth, we go to sleep, we get up hopefully at a regular time. We have some of those things we do. We make sure we nourish ourselves with foods that are going to help us be energized. We're going to nourish ourselves with people that can nourish and energize us and support us. These self-care things, we can call people, we can be doing some of these things that we do. You all probably could sit down and figure out 10 self-care things you probably already did for yourself today to get to be on this call. You do those things. So we want to be more mindful of them and build in more positive self-care skills that or strategies that we're doing, so we can buffer the storms and the stress and the strain that comes about, and also to meet our needs, to make sure we are meeting our needs. Those activities of daily living often that help us to get well, feel well, and stay well. So for many of us, we have these that we do, and they help us with if we are dealing with mental health or substance use issues, there might be other ones we have, or if we have medical issues too. Many of us have co-occurring medical conditions as well. We have other self-care things that we do to manage that condition. So it's building those repertoire of those activities we do, those basic activities, and then for our other needs, if we have other kinds of challenges or stress, we have other things that we can do. And it helps us to keep that balance. So it really keeps that balance. And I like to use this visual that many of you may have seen before, because it really helps us to think about our needs. We have needs in a holistic way. I talked about the physical needs, those basic needs. Those are ones you want to look at, really important for this work. Not to say all of these can be overwhelming sometimes, tending to all of these. Eventually, I'll send some inventories you can do, but the physical area becomes many times the catalyst for the positive actions of the other areas. So paying attention to our physical activity, what are we doing, that physical activity, what are we eating, how are we sleeping, how are we nourishing ourselves. Also in terms of physical needs, in terms of our self-care, it's thinking about those medical things that we're doing. Are we getting regular checkups? Because that's a self-care strategy to prevent getting some other longer-term problem like cancer or diabetes or high blood pressure out of control. If you're paying attention to certain needs on a regular basis, you could prevent that problem from occurring, or if you're living with that condition, you're probably going to be able to better manage it. So thinking about physical wellness, social wellness, really important, having those social support systems like I mentioned, and having that support system within work but outside of work, having this what are our social wellness needs. But focusing on ourselves, again, thinking about your environment. What do you do in our environment? How do we look at self-care areas in our environment that really can help us get to our work, feel energized in our work, and do the work in a really, really positive way that we intend to. So wellness is really being aware of yourself and aware of your needs as a whole person. And often you see how the needs or the areas are interconnected. So when one is positive, it could have another positive effect on the other areas. So if it's negative, it has the same thing. So, for example, if you're having too much anxiety, having too much stress in that emotional dimension, there's an emotional imbalance, it will sometimes impact some physical health problem, either the development of that or potentially, exacerbating, like if you have already a medical issue or some symptoms. Often it's going to affect our occupational, we might not feel as effective at work or feeling as competent at work. And then we sometimes start to have, either withdraw from people or maybe not seek out the support we need. Like on the other hand, again, finding a way that we I find for my own needs around wellness and doing this work and having a lot of ups and downs with it. For me, the sleep was the one. Between the sleep and the physical activity is the self-care that I really make sure every day. Those are two areas that I know if I put into my calendar my time to go to sleep and wake up, which thankfully in these days with certain strategies is much better than it was many years ago, but also some type of physical activity at certain intervals throughout the day is going to definitely make me a more positive person to be around, but also more effective at my work. And again, it's something that I had to learn for many years, was paying attention to my physical self-care needs. And all of us have many strategies, and I want to just stop for a minute and see if anybody can share any of the strategies you use around self-care in any of these dimensions. So maybe we can hear from folks if anybody wants to tell us something you're doing for a self-care strategy for your own wellness at work. Ashley, are we able to, should we unmute the lines, or?
Yeah, if people want to comment, they should be able to here, or they can type in the chat box as well.
This is Micah Pearson from Doña Ana County, AOT.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm all right. As far as what I do for self-care is, I literally had to schedule time to hang out with my friends, or else I wasn't going to.
Wow.
So I have weekly meetings to meet up with social things on every Thursday, for example. Thursday night, I meet up with friends.
Great. So you schedule it, you plan it, it's deliberate, just like the definition of self-care. You know, it's a planned and deliberate action that you do on a weekly basis. Fantastic.
It's a calendar event.
Yeah. Calendaring is good. Because you can get a pop-up if you do it into your other calendar to remind you sometimes. Thanks. You wouldn't want to share another a self-care that they do in any of the dimensions? Or do you want to type them in? We have quite a number of, there's about, I guess 18 of you on the, 16 or 18 people. Anybody want to type in what you're doing? Good, we've got Helen typing, yay. It tells you when people are starting the typing. Okay, great. So Helen typed in, everyone, if you can't see it, a period of silence when arriving home after work to regroup. Wow, that really fits well with some of the things I'm going to talk about in a little while, is that silence, taking that time to, just unplug and disconnect, which I think we think about that, the computer on all the time and too many wires in the plugs. If you don't unplug and reboot, sometimes the system crashes, right? So we don't want our system to crash, so this sounds like a really good strategy to just take that time, as Helen talked about, of taking that period of silence. Pam wrote going running, walking, hanging out with grandkids. So really a couple of the different dimensions are there, the running and the walking, good things for our physical dimensions, hanging out with grandkids, that could meet our socials. For some people, that's also a spiritual and an emotional benefit. And also could be intellectual, learning about what the children are learning and growing together and learning together with them. So you could hit on a couple of those dimensions with some of these wonderful examples that have just been shared by Micah, Helen, and Pam. There, we see how all the different dimensions can be impacted as we have these self-care strategies. So as we're going along, I encourage others to put them up, and I'm going to have a few other questions along the way because I really want to hear what you're doing and then just find out what else we can learn from one another. So these are really, really great things. So again, the holistic way, and I always try to remember this visual is just, I have T-shirts with this visual because I often look to the half-empty cup. And I need to keep looking at the half-full cup and trying to train my brain to do that. So this visual helps me to remember if I'm like socially feeling isolated or frustrated with people or down or out or emotionally in a, getting into a crisis, I can remember I have all these other areas of myself, and remember I have strength in each of them, and it's a good refocusing. I think about this visual of wellness as a kaleidoscope. It's there, and then we can narrow into one piece, and there's a beautiful picture when you put into a kaleidoscope. So I really like this wellness wheel, and I use it for my own refocusing and refocusing for myself when I need to reset myself or refocus myself. And when we think about wellness, the definition, again, going back to our needs, it's a conscious, deliberate process where we become aware of and make choices for that satisfying lifestyle. So it's looking back to the different dimensions and thinking about our lifestyle. And again, you want to do this lifestyle around this really good work, supporting other people, supporting people's recovery. And so to be able to have that, we have to look at this other part of our own needs, the needs we have around physical, spiritual, social, emotional, intellectual, occupational, environmental, and be aware of these needs and then start focusing on areas that are strong, things again, and especially those physical dimensions that are really, really important, and that emotional area, especially if we're doing those work. What are those skills and strategies we're doing to manage or keep the stress in check? And so, again, keeping our wellness self-care, thinking about the different areas. And I like this visual because this one boils down a lot of, it brings in a couple of the dimensions into play, but particularly the ones, like I said, that really are our reboot, not in addition to the silence thing that was mentioned or some of the things I'm going to talk about with the mindfulness, the moving ourselves, moving our body, really, really important. Hydrating ourselves, again, that's another one that helps us to keep us things moving, flowing, and keeps really important, and sometimes we neglect it when we're so on overdrive because we have so many people to visit or so many things to do or so much to do in the day-to-day work. Sleeping that amount that works for us, very important for many of us in mental health or addiction recovery or supporting others in those things. The sleep can be impacted, so getting a good sleep-wake cycle has been shown significant research behind the benefit of that, getting that just right sleep hygiene under way in part of our self-care strategies that can really improve your quality of your work and the quality of your life, and then loving ourselves, loving our body, not being able to, we might want to lose more weight or gain more weight, or we have something about our body we don't like, but accepting ourselves for who we are and being fine with our body and being able to move our body in ways to just kind of, as you're going to see, the yoga, people are getting more into yoga and finding yoga is an accessible activity for all ages, and just even a couple simple stretches can be a really important physical self-care. So I went over the self-care definition, the wellness model, and just give us the frame around why it's so important to think about, again, as we're talking about this wellness in the workplace. So these are things we're doing potentially in work or out of work. And one of the things I'd like you to think about, as I've just highlighted, and we've gotten some of these examples of things you're doing outside of work, but think about things inside of work that you can do, self-care things inside of work to support one another. There's probably things in your team meetings or your office space, thinking about the environmental dimension. What are some things in your environmental area where you work that could support self-care collectively amongst your groups? And that's one of the things I'd encourage you to think about as a takeaway from here is, what are you doing in the environment, or what could we do in the environment to really support our self-care? Are there things you can do? And it would be really great to hear some of those things, maybe in a follow-up call, to know of things you might have thought about doing or could do. What are we doing in our environment to support our emotional wellness? How are we supporting one another? And how is our social support system? Are people getting along? Are people validating one another? Are people supporting one another and learning new skills? Important to be thinking about that, or, you know, in terms of our supervision or our teamwork, how that's working to support wellness in the workplace. Are we celebrating things together, so celebrating our own successes, the successes of the people we work with? You know, sometimes we're working with people and there's just so many problems in their life and challenges, and sometimes we don't see there's much progress, but if we really look closely, we probably could find the wellness moments, that there are things positive, and we find ways to celebrate and share those things. Or when we're talking about people that we work with, can we talk about their strengths, their wellness strengths first? And that could help bring more of a positive light on the solution for how we can help the person with the problems that are facing them. So thinking about the kind of things in the workplace you can do to kind of really change the emotional tone of the workplace, change the culture to thinking about more about the wellness kind of things we're doing. Are we celebrating things, celebrating birthdays if that's something people like? Are we looking at the environment and putting things in the environment that are positive, that are supportive, that are helping us to grow? Does anyone want to share things that you have done or have thought about doing to improve the wellness in the actual workplace and space you are in? Does anyone want to share things you're doing or thought about doing? I have a couple people typing. So we have someone saying, you know, real important one related to what we're going to talk about, taking those mini breaks throughout the workday. You know, that is definitely one that rebooting, recharging, you know, not only doing it when you go home, like Helen mentioned, but taking it throughout the day and pacing ourselves. Real important and really, really challenging in the work that you do. We have to acknowledge it. Someone talked about we have group supervision on Thursday, and we have hot tea together as a team while we process. Oh, what a wonderful way, you know, to just enjoying a cup of tea together and mindfully drinking a cup of tea really kind of can really set a nice tone for the day and in the conversation probably that occurs. Very nice strategy. So just as simple as that. It's not simple because it's really a positive, I'm sure has a positive impact on people. It's you know, tea is a nice thing. It's a shared, and that sounds like the two really great ideas, the mini breaks and the tea when you have the supervision. So think about, as you guys are, you know, gone through this or after this, try to think about other things that can be done to help support wellness in the workplace. You know, I've been doing this work for many, many years, and we do a lot of things, again, about the celebration of things, people taking turns on bringing in somewhat, you know, kind of healthy foods on different days, sharing recipes. Those are things that I know in our workplace culture, when they've been operating, I see like a lot of positivity amongst people. And then that sharing, you know, people get into this, you know, making those smoothie juices and things, or having that happen on a couple times a month, and eventually the group got a smoothie kind of blender thing. You know, and so it's a fun thing. People can take the break and then they can share and try different recipes. You know, those are things for the physical wellness, but there's other things, again, going out on breaks, taking breaks, and then also maybe just even thinking about the work flow and having conversations about, you know, pacing your work flow, and that sometimes might need in supervisory, you know, involvement on that, but it's definitely can really help with the potential stress and strain and overload that people may feel as a result of the work that they're doing. So again, when I want to highlight, one of the things that we've found, and I've just recently developed over the last year and a half, a wellness self-care education program for caregivers that's based on wellness, self-care education. Around a lot of the things I mentioned, in the last 20 minutes or so around the 8 dimensions and some of the areas around sleep and mindful moving, mindful eating, self-care, but brought into this idea of mindfulness, the idea of being more mindful. And again, this is there's a lot of scientific evidence behind the benefits of mindfulness for people, and it's becoming much more acceptable. And I think in our work, it's a really good, there's a lot of strategies in it that can really help. One of the biggest person I've read about in mindfulness, there's a lot of people you can read about, but there's a person named Thich Nhat Hanh, and he's written a lot of books and done a lot of work in this there, and it's just discovering the magic of the present moment. So a lot of this idea of self-care and wellness, it's becoming more focused on this present moment, thinking about our needs, but thinking about what's happening for us and helping us to pause. He's definitely one of the authors I would encourage. Many of you probably have other authors. Definitely there's a lot of them out there that good. But it really starts in this present moment. And this is just a great quote that highlights some of the idea about, do you make regular visits with yourself? So mindfulness strategies can really help enhance our wellness self-care, making that regular visit to ourselves. And again, it gets back to what I said earlier, is one of the best things we can do is develop a reflective habit, getting into the habit of checking in with ourselves a couple times of the day. And again, taking that emotional weather without judgment, because we could take the weather, or we could do this, but what mindfulness does, it helps us to focus, number one, but it helps us to suspend the judgment. So mindfulness, by definition, it's being that you're fully aware of that present moment without judgments about what should or should not be happening, because we come into a lot of things with judgment, and that often really can get us down the wrong path. It can take us down that negative path, that angry path, that path that sometimes is not so helpful. But what mindfulness does, it really helps us to become more aware of right now what's happening. It involves us taking into account our senses. So your hearing, what do you hear right now? What are you seeing right now? For sometimes, are we smelling something? Even if there are smells that happen, or what are we being attentive to the smell that is in the environment around us? It's also helping us to become more attuned to our taste and touch, as well as there's some sense of movement or proprioceptive senses that might be occurring. So it's helping us to concentrate on those senses and cultivating a greater awareness and comfort with that sensation, because the sensation may be really starting to agitate us, or it might starting to make us really tired. So, but with mindfulness, we start to get that greater awareness and comfort with sensations that we experience in the body. And it really helps us use the idea of focusing on our breath as the primary object of our attention. So it really helps us to get out of, because if our anxiety is high and we start to have it helps us to focus on a really important thing that we can focus in on our breath. And I think that's one of the best things about mindfulness that does, is it helps people to really regulate your breath and help you to get our breath and be more attentive to our breathing, because that's what happens when we start to get anxious, stressed, in crisis. The breathing starts to change. So developing that greater awareness of and becoming more focused in on our breath, again, that's so much research showing how it can help people to regulate, or what we call self-regulate, and prevent people from potentially going into crisis, potentially causing blood pressure to go higher. And many people are able to really get into that practice of using mindfulness formally during the day or informally that can really help people. And there's a lot of work around just doing things more mindfully. But again, the breath piece is really, really important. And this is not a whole mindfulness session. If you want more information on this, there's some great, like I said, people out there that do this work. But I think for us, it's just getting into that habit, again, that it talks about, that regular visit. It's really important to be thinking about that. And again, to start to really getting into that habit of checking in. Just like we check our phones, right? We check in our phones, but we can develop that habit. And with mindfulness, how it can really help us, it's going to help us to really be more back on focusing on those self-care areas, those physical, emotional, social, using that check-in every once in a while to help us become more focused on the moment and where we're at, appreciate it, but having that non-judgmental awareness. And this, in mindfulness, like people think, what is it? Is it mindful? Because the one on the left, the cartoon on the left with the person is just got everything up there, and that's really, the mind is full of every to-do list and every whatever's going on. That's not going to usually be so helpful for us to have our mind so cluttered with all that fullness. It's really being mindful. It's helping to see, okay, we're in this space, and it's, again, you see how the space matches the space that the person's in, and it's being in that space, not with all this other stuff that comes about. And again, it might seem simple, it sounds practical. It's sometimes very, very challenging to get into the habit of doing this and to be able to really make it into our routines. But we have found over and over again, and again through our wellness self-care curriculum that we developed for caregivers, family members, and we're just so able to take these ideas and put them into their life. And we're seeing some profound impacts about their ability to manage their stress, but also they have, some of them are really talking about better relationships with the family member that they're supporting, because they're actually not reacting and they're not getting caught up and getting overwhelmed sometimes with the self-care burden. So these strategies definitely work for caregivers, and I think you guys are all caregivers, so why I'm sharing them with you. So using that with the mindfulness, it's a non-judgmental awareness. Very, very important, the taking away the judgment. This is a really good, one of the cartoons that shows, taking the pause, right? Because we're often over there on the right? We're just over there on the treadmill going, and then it's just like crash, crash, crash. But with taking, like was mentioned by Helen, taking that silence, that moment, recognizing, supporting those brief moments. This is not, you have to go out into the wilderness and, away from everybody. You can do this even in your house, in your bathroom, in your office, in the, on the line at the grocery store. You can take those brief moments of pausing and reflecting in the midst of your doing to really take those mindful moments. And again, these were things that we worked with these caregivers and helping them to, we went through a curriculum that was 5 sessions that we worked with them, and it's been very, very powerful. And we got so much interest in staff wellness and staff self-care using these strategies. We've done a bit of the series now with staff like yourself, and people are finding that they can make this accessible, and the simplicity of the strategies often just makes it accessible. Using that non-judgmental awareness, focusing, and then the whole piece about the breathing and getting more focused in our breathing. It's all doable stuff. You don't have to go buy any kind of apparatuses for it. It's all things that's accessible to us. So I want to switch now because we're moving into a little more, and I want to get some more feedback from you guys about how helpful this is. I'm going to move into the yoga in a minute, but I want to hear from anyone on the call. Have they ever tried mindfulness, or do they see any value to the idea of taking this idea of pausing and becoming more focusing on using some mindfulness strategies for their own wellness self-care. So if we could either have anybody, you can unmute yourself or type in if you have used it or you think it's something you might want to try. A couple people are typing. Somebody wrote that they haven't used it, but they're going to try it, and that's great. I think I can send some links to some resources. I'll also send over to Ashley to circulate. We do a newsletter called Words of Wellness, and in the last edition we did a little thing about mindfulness, so it might give you some ideas about some resources you can go online. We actually even put some video links there in that newsletter, so that might be helpful. So I'll send that over to you, Ashley, and maybe you could circulate it to the group.
Sure.
But yeah, I think Ashley, do you have any thoughts as I've gone along around the mindfulness or the wellness you wanted to add?
Well, I guess back to your wellness piece, I know that here it's a lot of people take their breaks, and we have a walking trail behind our office.
Nice.
So there's a lot of, especially now that the weather's getting better, I know that's something a lot of people choose to do, is to take their break and take a walk, and that really seems to help.
That's great. Taking advantage of what's around your environment, very important. Yeah, great. Okay, well, I'm going to move in, just speaking of that, with time is, so, we've talked about the wellness pieces, we've talked about this idea of mindfulness becomes the way, even if you don't do anything, just come away with the idea of when are we taking that pause, or, is it going in and making that regular visit with ourselves, taking that reflective habit. If that's one thing you can walk away with, that would be great, because it's going to really get you into that habit of really paying attention to your needs and just making sure we're meeting many of them. So in addition to this idea of the wellness self-care for your wellness at work, there's a lot of interest, and part of this program we've put together has been also teaching people just some very basic, gentle yoga. And I know yoga is, a popular practice that's been around for years. It's been in this country, I guess, been around for a while, but it's just developed a lot more of a popularity. And we're seeing more and more people in recovery, but also people who are just wanting to keep good health get into the practice of yoga. And yoga is not putting your legs around your head, which is something I've been trying that, but I'm not sure when I'm going to get there, and I don't think that's my goal. The goal of the yoga is just helping you to moving our body very mindfully, so that it brings in some mindfulness, but it's really a good strategy for stress release and stress reduction. It's especially a gentle yoga class. If you could get into one, you would just see the benefits of just focusing on different body piece parts, but also just stretching our bodies and moving our bodies in very mindful ways. And it's not, it really also helps you to focus in again on your breathing. There's some really, really good strategies around just focusing on the breathing, and people really getting back again to the purpose and the overview of this, finding that balance, really report some benefits of good mind, body, spirit connections, really calming the mind, refocusing the mind, but it really builds that connection to the body and the spirit and helps people to bring that into more harmony. So it really helps with strength and flexibility for many people. That's something as we get older we have to think about, and especially flexibility. We don't want to fall, be thinking about that. It helps really people to, and there is some research around that can help people with prevention of falls, but helping us with strength and flexibility. Not only flexibility of our body, I think it helps with our flexibility of our thinking as well. Mindfulness also has been shown to really help to do some elevation of mood, definitely better sleep, and again, it really helps with that outlook, or that it helps you to look in, again, bringing back to that self-care. It's another technique to help us with our self-care, to help us to be thinking on that piece about looking in, and helps us to really brighten that outlook. So in the strategies we do is we just teach some very, very basic things around things that you could do even in your chair, or you don't need necessarily a mat. Very simple yoga stretches that people are finding that they can bring into their daily routines, or they can do on a quick break, or it could be a quick thing of getting up from the chair and doing 2 minutes of some kind of yoga stretch, or even one. And people are finding that it really helps them to get back to what they're doing, and it also just keeps them feeling better. So yoga is definitely something to be thinking about. And at this moment, as we're getting to wind down, I'd encourage you to just, wherever you're sitting or standing, just putting your hands up over. You could be standing by your door, get up from your chair, sit in your chair. You can do like the cat here and the woman over here, and just lifting up our arms and just keeping them up and stretching them for about, half a minute, and keeping them up there. And, that can just really help change your, the blood flow of the body. It can help us to we recenter, and we might have been looking at the screen, or be caught up in whatever, if we're typing or we're doing something on our phone, but we can help us open ourselves up and start to look out in front of us rather than down at our phone. Again, it just helps the circulation and refocusing. And this is just a simple stretch you can think about doing in the course of the day. Take a yoga stretch, join it. Your cat or your dog might join you soon, but just encourage you to even just try it right now, or just think about a time in the day that you can do that. And I can send some resources again about this. Very, very simple things you can build into your day-to-day workplace habits or your home habits. So, these are just 2 strategies that are being used more and more, and encourage you to be thinking about how they might work into your focus around your own wellness for workplace. Another piece about our wellness for workplace, as I move towards ending this and getting any kind of questions before we end for the hour, is the value of support. So support came up in the wellness wheel. It's so essential, right? And support, it's that whole piece. It helps us to know that we're not alone. So as we starting to think about how we're taking care of our self-care, we want to have that support and get that support from one another, and use the peer support from other peers. Again, the peers in your work, your family member, a peer, person in recovery, you're working together, getting that support, or getting it from other people, maybe at other agencies or other kind of support groups that occur out in your community. Important to get that support to maybe learn together more wellness self-care skills together. And we do a lot of workshops around this, and I find when I go do these workshops, I just learn so much, especially from the peer providers and the family providers doing the work. The learning that you can share with each other is just so invaluable, and it can really help one another the more you share. Also, having that comfort and that confidence in that strategy to reach out when you need it, because we often wait too long before we really need the support, and then sometimes things spiral out of control. So that's why we I said earlier, it is important to develop that support system in the workplace, outside of the workplace, and have both available to you so things don't spiral out of control, and you have that. Sometimes it's better to have more support, and then so you don't feel alone or you don't feel isolated, and it doesn't get to that point where it's out of control that the person can't help you. The support is getting, again, when you're together with each other, you're getting information. You're going to get wellness self-care strategies from one another, because you've been in a similar situation. People may experienced it, or they have some kind of a way that they handled it and they can share it. It can really save you a lot of time and energy from maybe things spiraling out of control and not being able to solve the solution when you've heard that solution or that strategy that other person. And we know with support, there's just that great learning that happens from the shared experience of other people in a similar situation. So as you think about, what I've talked about today, about wellness in the workplace and thinking about your own wellness, self-care needs and getting that support or reaching out and figuring out support system, like was mentioned, you have the group supervision. Maybe a little bit of that time is spent on, okay, let's hear about the self-care strategies we've used this week that helps, sharing it with one another. That's just one way to get that support and to learn from one another. So that could be a strategy you kind of incorporate into your supervision or your teamwork, bringing about that forward, or highlighting the different self-care strategies you're doing, or taking the moment together to pause, using some strategies from the mindfulness before you start a meeting, to just pause or do that quick yoga stretch or another yoga stretch that many of you probably teaching yoga or know some strategies. You can share them with one another. So the support is essential in terms of us thinking about our wellness in the workplace and our thinking about the wellness self-care that you are doing or you're going to continue to do to try to strengthen that. So so I covered quite a bit today, and I want to just see what kind of questions people have. If you can unmute your line if you have questions about anything I mentioned or comments about them, if this is helpful or something that I said that you feel you need more information, we can use that for our discussion. We'd like to maybe unmute your line, and we'd like to see, we have about a couple people. Anybody feel this was helpful or any piece of this is helpful for the work that you're doing? Somebody wants, glad to have the wellness handout. Somebody mentioned they'll be sharing it. Helen, thanks, Helen. Somebody wrote, I do think it's important for us to take time to take care of ourselves. Thanks so much. Yeah, definitely. It just seems intuitive. Oh yeah, it's going to happen, but it just gets so neglected at times in our work. And I think people feel like, well, you're supposed to be taking care of those people. You can't be focusing on yourself. And again, at the beginning, you got to put the mask on ourselves. So I think the idea of being in tune with our own, making that time. And I loved, Micah, you brought that up, calendaring it, putting it into the calendar. Such great strategies. So Ashley, do you have any thoughts or questions or anything that we could ask the group before we just have a few more minutes? You want to give us any kind of a heads up on anything else or anything else that you saw that maybe people typed in that I missed?
No, I don't think we missed anything. I do know if anyone wants to type in the chat box, sometimes that's easier than commenting.
Yeah.
through the phone. But if anyone else wants to make any other suggestions or questions, that would be great. But no, I think you definitely covered everything, Peggy.
Yeah, it's a lot, and it's hard, it would have been nice to be in a room together and have the tea together, drinking the tea together. I could have brought some yoga mats and gave you some yoga mats to practice on. It would have been a nicer thing, but we're across the country, so it's great that we do have this technology, and there is the limits of this. But I'm just very excited to, be able to share this again. I'm going to send over to Ashley the newsletter that I mentioned. And if anyone, don't hesitate to contact me, because I've been doing a lot of this work for many years, and I just love to share things. And for the good work you're doing, it's just so important to find other resources out there. So I want to thank you for the opportunity to be able to kind of share this work, and hopefully, we'll be continuing to build this program for caregivers. Like I mentioned, we initially developed it for caregivers of, family members of people with mental health and addiction and intellectual disabilities, but now we're using the curriculum for, people like yourself who are working in the field. And when I first put the program out there, people were not, we were only putting it out for families, and all the staff were mad at me. They're like, we need this. And again, eventually I was able to start to use it for staff, and was glad, and we're, finding ways to expand it for staff. So the need is great, and want to thank everybody for the opportunity to talk, and to you today, and again, for all of you who participated, and those of you, just please feel free. Again, you'll get the materials, and just have a great day, and please just continue to do the great work that you do.
Thank you so much, Peggy.
Great. Have a good one. Bye.